Good afternoon. This is the second lecture on surviving cancer in Asia. This lecture series will be provided through Todai Open Courseware. This lecture is open to global audience, to anyone inside or outside the University of Tokyo. In the previous lecture, we introduced the concept of cross-boundary cancer studies in order to overcome boundaries such as the prevalence of Western medical knowledge and practice that does not correspond to the actual condition in Asia. We need new interdisciplinary approach to cancer with a collaboration among Asian researchers from diverse disciplines from humanity to medicine. The global diffusion of digital media is changing the academic world. It is a universal distribution of knowledge accessibility to everybody from the bottom up. Regionally, Asian countries share many communities, becoming super-aged societies, and ethnically, there are many shared aspects too. The cultural diversity in Asia from medical perspectives has been considered as an obstacle to deal with cancer, but this cultural diversity can also provide a fertile ground for the research of individual longevity and the modes of coexistence in the region. That is one of the reasons why we have created cross-boundary cancer studies. We hope the other regions of Asia can participate and contribute to the network of multidisciplinary knowledge on cancer in Asia, among which, especially through the network of universities in this digital age. Today's lecture can show us a grand vision related to the following question. Why should universities collaboration in Asia in this digital age, and how? Today's lecturer is Professor Yoshimi. He is a professor of sociology, cultural studies, and media studies. He currently serves as the vice president of the University of Tokyo. He has written many books on cultural theory, urban culture, international expositions, media culture, information technology, the emperor system, and Americanization in modern Japan and East Asia. He has been a leading scholar in the field of media and cultural studies in contemporary Japan. His today's lecture title is Cultural Sustainability in Digital Age, Dynamic Collaboration Between Digital Archive and University Education. Professor Yoshimi, would you start?
Okay, thank you very much, Kawahara-san. And thank you very much, Akaza-sensei, and all the teaching assistants here. And today, I'm going to talk about cultural sustainability in Asia. But maybe in this course, the major topic in this course is, the cross-boundary cancer studies, or cancer in Asia is a major issue in this course. So what is the relationship between the cancer studies and media and cultural studies here? Or I'm going to talk about the archive or memory or media and collective memory or collective something, knowledge, such kind of things. So what is the relationship between the cancer and so on, such kind of issues. So Akaza-sensei and Kawahara-san asked me to, because in the final part of my lecture, I need to ask something to you, or I need to, I need to give you some kind of homework to write something. So let me do it now, because in this lecture from now, I'm going to talk about mainly archive knowledge which is archived in some big database or something, so on. So I'd like to ask you your idea about Asian or cross-boundary Asian cancer archive. What kind of archive, digital archive, can be constructed in terms of cancer in Asia, or Asian health issue, or Asian such kind of disease and health and such kind of issue. Because even in the field, I believe that the archived knowledge is, or collective knowledge and archived knowledge is also very important and very effective. So please write your idea about cross-boundary Asian cancer archive. This is my homework, my question to you. And I'm going to talk, explain about the idea of archive and also cultural sustainability, because I'm doing the work in the field of the cultural studies or sociology of culture and cultural history. So culture is my major issue. I'm not the person in the field of cancer. So what I'm only talks about to you is basically culture. But in that sense, especially I'm going to focus on the cultural sustainability today. Sustainability is very popular word, especially in terms of the natural resources, because sustainability of oil or sustainability of energy or sustainability of other kind of the, natural resources very, important issue today. In that sense, in your everyday life, you collect old newspaper and you bring some place shinbunshi kaishu and recycling of the newspaper, or you also do some work on the recycling of pet bottle, or recycling of rare metal, or recycling of gyunyu pack, milk pack, and many different kinds of recycling, But I believe the cultural sustainability or recycling of knowledge is also important to develop the deep knowledge or deep cultural productivity. That's the base of this kind of cultural productivity. So the cultural sustainability or recycling of knowledge and culture is also important. That is what I'm going to talk from now. So introduction, defining culture and East Asia. So please let me roughly define the culture and East Asia, both of these two difficult concepts. First, about culture. Culture is, in some sense, agriculture. It's very funny, but culture and agriculture have same origin. Because agriculture cultivate or nurturing agriculture, cultivate the land and soil, and you put some rice and vegetable and so on. But in case of the culture cultivate people and people's knowledge and people's mind and people's way of thinking. So culture and agriculture has the same origin in their etymology. But the concept of the changed, especially after the 19th century. Because after the French Revolution, Napoleon invaded many other countries in Germany and other countries. And in case of the France, they emphasized civilization. So against French imperialism, the German people emphasize or they maintain the importance of culture, because basically civilization is a process of homogenization towards the French civilization in early 19th century or late 18th century. But in case of culture, the German people maintain that the German has their own culture. So of course, this is how to say, the discourse of the nationalism, German nationalism against French Revolution and against French civilization. So from beginning or from early 19th century, culture and civilization is very different world, or almost, how to say, the antagonism or fight between these two different concepts. Because culture is from the beginning plural, and there's many different cultures. German culture is different from French cultures, French civilization, or the English culture is different, or Italian culture is different, and there's many different cultures. At the same time, culture took over religion. So culture appeared after the 19th century in the process of the secularization. Because before 18th or 17th century, the most important cultural element of social life was religions. So God is most important. But after the 19th century, on the one hand, in the process of industrialization, the secularization, proceeded. And culture, in some sense, took over the position of the religion. Thirdly, the culture, the concept of culture, are promoted by nation. It is the same as the university. I'm going to talk about the university later, but not only university, but also culture is strongly related with nationalism from the beginning. This is the basic formation of the concept of culture in 19th century European world. But in case of Japan, the story is quite different. Because, after the late 19th century, Japanese westernization started. And the Japanese society imported many Western elements from Europe and the US. In that sense, in Japan, for Japanese people in Meiji era or Taisho era, there's no difference between culture and civilization. Culture is bunka, and civilization is bunmei. But in Japanese society, the bunmei and the bunka is almost same. So that's quite different. In European countries, culture and civilization is completely different. So, and after the 20th century, there's many different meaning of the cultures. Because 20th century, after the 20th century, society find that many different cultures, culture of others. Because anthropology anthropology discovered the culture in local minorities and primitive societies. And cultural studies or sociology discovered the cultures of young people. That means subculture. So the meaning of culture, expanded in very different way after the 20th century. Also, I almost skipped these things, but in late 19th and 20th centuries, one of the most important thinkers about culture was Raymond Williams, who was founding father of the culture studies. And he wrote many books, especially about the concept of culture. Culture and Society in 1958, Keywords 1976, and Culture in 1981. So he emphasized that there's some word or some concept which transformed structurally in 19th and 20th century, especially democracy, culture, and art. So democracy, culture, and art, these words quite, transformed after the late 19th century. In case of Japan, let me explain a little bit more about the concept of culture. Because in Japan, culture was translated to bunka. So bunka was often used, especially after the war, in post-war era, especially in 1950s. Of course, the culture was often became very popular after 1920s. And then war, we have war. And after the war, 1950 and 1960, culture was became very popular word. So in Japan, we talked about bunka kokka, bunka sai, bunka koenkai, bunka bu, and blah, blah, blah. So many different meaning of the cultures. Because in 1950s, the Japanese society was defeated because of the military defeat. Military Japanese society was defeated. After that, the post-war redevelopment of Japan was, it was said that should be based on art and culture. So art and culture as the peaceful power of New Japan was emphasized. In some sense, ideologically emphasized in many newspapers and many media after the war. Because in Japanese case, the culture is a little bit different nuance from Western countries. Because culture was, as I said, translated to bunka. And the bunka is the first letters, bun, is the opposition was there's a kind of opposition between the bun and the bu military, because bun is a literary, and the bu is military, and the literary and military is the contrary the direction, the very different direction. So Japanese society was defeated by West America in military sense. So it is said that after the war, Japanese society should be redeveloped based on bunka, that culture, but at the same time, the bun. So this is the basic definition about the culture. And at the same time, let me explain about East Asia at the same time. This is a very interesting map about East Asia. Please see. So what is interesting? This is the Asian map of Asia. So where is Indonesia in this map? At the top. Because almost top area. And is there any person who come to Hokkaido or Siberian region? No. But where is the Siberia? It's the bottom. I like this map because this map explains Asian society much better than ordinary map. Because you can see the Korean Peninsula. Thank you very much. This is Korean Peninsula, and this is Japan. So this is Kyushu and Hokkaido and the Siberia area, and China and the Philippines and Indonesia. So you can understand the center of this Asian region was here. East China Sea. Here is most important. And Japan, or Japanese archipelago is consists of about 7,000 islands. Japan has 7,000 islands. And the Philippines has almost 7,500 or 8,000 islands. And in case of Indonesia, maybe you have, how many islands you have? I think the Indonesia 16 or 70,000. Yeah, 16 or 70,000. So in total, the Asian society consists of about 50,000, 40 or 50,000 islands. So huge archipelago, many islands and peninsula. This is the most important, characteristic of Asian society, because the islands huge number of the islands means diversity. Each island has their own culture. So if you have 50,000 islands, you have 50,000 different identity. So huge. So until the 8,000 years ago, all this area was a huge continent. But after the end of Ice Age, sea expanded. Of course, there's an expansion sea of sea. And after that, Asian society, or this huge continent, became the huge archipelago. So Asian society, the most important character, the character of this Asian society, especially East Asia, is diversity, huge diversity. This is and this diversity today, this Asian diversity has reappear, or in some countries, re-emerge after the year of colonialism and war. After the 19th century, Asian society was basically colonized by Western societies. And after that, First World War and the Second World War and many Cold War. So after Cold War ended, these kinds of diverse Asia reappeared. So I already explained about culture and Asia. So after that, I'm going to talk about the historical process, about university and other kind of knowledge system. First of all, let me, maintain that I think, from my perspective, 16th century and 21st century are similar. There's many reasons. One reason is, who is this? Already know. This is Christopher Columbus. And he discovered new continent, American continent, in 1492. And who is this? This is Vasco da Gama. And he discovered, or he traveled African route in 1497. And this is Magellan. And he did a global route. He traveled around the world in early 16th century. So important thing is all of these great sailors were almost contemporary, almost same. The people who live same age. There's no difference. So there's a contemporary. All these people, great sailors, live almost same age. At the end of 15th century and early 16th century. So the globalization started very suddenly in the end of 15th century and expanded, especially based on the silver. Silver is the most important money, most important things. And every global market was emerged in that moment. And at the same time, what happened in late 15th century and early 16th century? Also, who is this? This is Gutenberg. And he discovered printing machine or printing system. And after his discovery of printing system, many printed book has expanded throughout European countries. So if you go to some kind of museum in France or Germany in some place, so you can find that huge historical museum. You can see there's so many printed books in 16th century in very different type, very different the scale or very different type of the printed books in the early 16th century. So the number of the printed book expanded very rapidly in early 16th centuries. So he is Copernicus. And because and his new theory, Copernicus' new theory, was especially based on all these kinds of the printed books. The big difference between his age and previous age was printed book. So after the Copernicus, people began to correct many data which is printed form. And they start to discuss, or they try to compare the different type of data and how to say, the hypothesis that they, how to say. So for the Copernicus revolution, the printing system was necessary. And after the 6th century, knowledge, the publishing system became more and more important. And many scientific discoveries were based on these kinds of printing, the mass of the printed data. So on the one hand, the 16th century was the age of great voyage. But it was the beginning of the globalization. And today, we are living in the age of the very, very, how to say, the globalization is much more proceeded. And at the same time, the early 16th century was, how to say, age of printing revolution. And today, such kind of the printing revolution, the printing system changed for the people's access to the knowledge. People became much more easier. The accessibility to the knowledge became much more easier after the printing revolution. But today, we are how to say, we are living in the age of digital revolution or digital age, and in this digital technology, the accessibility to the information became much more easier. So there is a continuity from 16th century to 21st century. Between these two centuries, 500 years, it was called modernity or modern age. So 16th century was the entrance of modern age. And the 21st century was maybe exit of modern age. This is general view of this big history. So we need to discuss about university situation first. So what is university? Well, what is the history of university? Because university is one of the most important agencies that produce intellectual people and also knowledge. The first birth of university was occurred in 12th and 13th century. In medieval cities, the Bologna University and Paris University, these were two first universities. The most important things for the birth of university was a commercial network of medieval cities. Because after the 10th and the 10th and 11th century, the European network, European cities, how to say, European cities are networked or connected with each other more and more. And between these cities, many different kinds of people traveled, including merchant, carpenter, and religious people, and intellectuals, professors and students. All these kinds of people traveled from one city to the other cities. And university was emerged as cooperative union of these intellectual people, of these professors and students, because they were travelers. And travelers was very much, how to say, the position was very weak against the rulers or kings or some kind of the, how to say, local landowners. Because local rulers or local, how to say, the landowners and the local king or local, say, the ruling class people try to get tax from those intellectual people, but they do not want to pay to those kinds of the, how to say, the ruling people. So they need to make a kind of the cooperative union against local rulers. And they authorize, based on Roman Empire or Roman Catholic Church and so on. And they need to keep their freedom and that kind of things. This was the beginning of university. But after the 14th, especially 16th century, university on the one hand expanded in the numbers, but at the same time they deteriorate and almost die. It is quite interesting because many of the how to say, important thinkers and scientists and in modern age were not university professors. Please think about Descartes, Pascal, or who is a there are many important thinkers and scientists, but there are very few scientists who was professors, university professors. Most of the people was a member of the academy, and they have their own patronaged by the rich people. But they were not university professors, because university in 16th and 17th century were very intellectually not so varied. A little bit something like the high school thing. Of course, high school is important today, but in the level, the university is not regarded as a top-level intellectual, how to say, the institution. The top-level intellectual institution was academy, or some kind of different type of the institution from university. And especially after the printing revolution, I already mentioned, you can access to the knowledge not through university, but through printed books. If you collect so many books, if you can collect many books around you, you can develop your knowledge only through books. So it was quite similar with today, because in order to get the important knowledge, you can get important knowledge through internet and digital archive. So university is not so sure. We are not so sure that university is necessary not. So in the 16th century, so you can access to the important knowledge through books. So the importance of the university decreased after the 16th century. 16th and 17th and 18th century was the age of academy and publishing, because as I said, many scientists and many philosophers were great authors of their books. So publishing of their own writing, of your own writing, was quite important in 18th and 19th century. So in 18th century, the university was not important at all. But after the 19th century, university re-emerged or rebirthed. Because I can say that the first age of the first generation of the university emerged in 12th and 13th century, and it developed in 14th and 15th century, but it deteriorated, and has said the importance of a university decreased after 16th century. But the importance of the university has again increased after the 19th century. Because this rebirth of university, or second birth of university, was strongly related with, as I mentioned, nationalism and the concept of culture. In the early 19th century, or late 18th century, early 19th century, because in military sense, Germany was inferior to France, because French military, French army was stronger than German army, and France was already, French society and the French government, say we are a center of European civilization. So against that, Germany emphasized that we are the nation of culture. And in that context, the German people, especially in Berlin, that they, redeveloped the concept of the university, especially under the leadership of Humboldt. And Humboldt emphasized that the research and research and learning is same thing, or education and research is same thing. So he tried to combine a new concept of university in Germany in 19th century. The Humboldt tried to combine the concept of the research and advanced research and the concept of the learning together. So in case of the natural science or engineering, the labo became more and more, laboratory became more and more important after the 19th century. And in case of the social science and humanities, the seminar became more and more important. So in seminar and the laboratory, under the Humboldt concept, the 19th century German university tried to combine the research and learning together. And these new concepts of university made great success. And this German model of university in 19th century was imported in many different countries, in UK and US and many other countries. American case is a little bit different because until the late 19th century, German university was regarded as top level. Even the Harvard or Yale or Princeton, Stanford, all these kinds of American top universities were inferior to German university, Berlin University. Even American people believed that the German university was best university. And American university was, was not so good as German university in 19th century. So American university wanted to change this kind of relationship with German university. That is why they invent the graduate school system. Because American university is something like a college. So above this college, America or US invented a graduate school system where many PhD and MA was produced. And because of this graduate school system, American university system became much more, American university, after this graduate school system, American university could surpass the German universities. So I've been talking about the transformation of university from the difference, the university was the first generation, and the university was the second generation university, and first generation university and second generation university, and difference of these two time. I've been talked, and rebirth of university after 19th century, and all this process was related with the expansion of printing system or information system So let me look at the development of the information system in different perspectives. Because from 16th century to 20th century, this long process was the process of the expansion of mass media or mass information system. In 16th century, as I explained, the printing system emerged and expanded. So people can buy many different type of book printed. Printed book was much cheaper than the handwritten books, because if you copy the one book with your handwriting, it costs a lot of time more than printing. But in case of the printing system, you can produce several thousand books at once. So the volume or quantity or volume of the books or the information was very much different. And after the printing system, the society of mass media started. From 16th century to 18th century, the the publishing system was most important mass media system. Many publishers and readers appeared. After the 19th century, newspaper company appeared. And the newspaper became the most important mass media. And in 20th century, broadcasting system. All these different types of systems, publishing, newspaper, and broadcasting, but were same in terms of mass information system. So all this mass information system promote the emergence of the emerging community and the emergence of mass consumption. But after that, digital media comes. So after all this process of the nationalism and printing revolution and the emergence of university and mass media process, the internet and globalization came in 21st century. The problem is in this new process, or in this, digital media system, in this digital media situation, are we, or can we become more clever or not? Because, because today, on the one hand, the accessibility to the information was much easier than before. Because if you have an iPad, or you have your mobile, and other kinds of the device, you can access very easily to many different types of information. So information again expanded. Knowledge and information was expanded in 16th century. But knowledge and information expanded in 21st century again. But the problem is, even in this process, we are not so wise. We are not so intellectual as the speed of this information explosion. So question is how we can use or how we can deal with these kinds of information explosion in 21st century. So in this process, archive or archiving practice and many different types of the practice became more and more important. So based on digital media or digital technology, we can collect and we can reserve many different types of the information knowledge in digital archive. This is quite different from the previous era, because until the 19th and 20th century, we have library, and the library collect many different types of books, and they preserve these kinds of books. And we also have museum, and the museum collect many different types of artworks and so on, and they preserve. But today, because of the expansion of digital technology, we can include this kind of correction to this kind of the correction archive. Also, photo, film, sound, and scenario, and plan, and score, and narrative, and email, and website, and Twitter. Huge different types of information we can archive, and we can correct, and we can reserve or preserve, and we can restructure these kinds of different types of information. That kind of process, the project is possible. So how we can integrate and how we can deal with these kinds of different images or different data. The key point is, I think, the dialectic collaboration between the, documented knowledge and corrective knowledge is most important in this process. Because on the one hand, in digital media age, the corrective knowledge or corrective knowledge production was very much, expanding today. You know, Wiki and Google and Twitter and Facebook and iTunes and OCW here and MOOCs and many different types of the corrective knowledge system. The knowledge based on digital media are coming to more and more, correctively produced and correctively consumed. But at the same time, we also have many different types of documented knowledge. That means the library and museum and archive and film archive and TV archive and correction. So in many different cases, in many different spaces and forms, the knowledge are archived. And collaboration of these different types of knowledge, corrective knowledge and documented knowledge, is very important. Because in the university, what we are doing in the university is exactly that kind of thing. Collaboration or dialectic collaboration between the corrective knowledge and documented knowledge. Because when we discuss in the classroom, like here, if we have a discussion, we are producing the corrective knowledge. Because always this kind of the discussion and the seminar and that kind of thing is corrective practice. We discuss together. We say, you say something and I say something and so on. But at the same time, when we write the thesis or articles, we go to many different types of archive and fieldwork because we need to correct our important data. So we go to library and archive and fieldwork and interview and so on. We do that to correct the important data. So for the, as a researcher, students or professor, as a researcher, we are doing these two different types of things always. On the one hand, we are doing something in corrective knowledge. But at the same time, we are doing something in archive knowledge. So collaboration between two different types of knowledge is university practice. Always we are doing. So the question about the, digital archive is how we can collaborate or how we can productively combine these two different types of knowledge. In the first place, I asked you, please design the Asian Cancer Archive. So in order to construct the Asian Cancer Archive, this kind of the collaboration between the corrective knowledge and archive knowledge was necessary. Because on the one hand, we need to discuss about with Korean people and Chinese people and Philippine people or Indonesian people or Indian people about Asian cancer. But at the same time, the documented knowledge about the cancer is quite important. Because in hospital, in the library, in the hospital, or on the street, and on the village, and in many places, we have documented knowledge. This is same as disaster, because when we think about the disaster archive, on the one hand, we need to discuss about disaster and together, and we need to produce. The corrective process is important. But at the same time, document about the disaster, great East Japan earthquake, tsunami, or different kind of the disaster. We need to keep our own document in digital form. And we need to combine this kind of the discussion and the project with documented knowledge. Documented, huge scale of the documented knowledge is quite important. So what we've been done previously is I and some of the colleagues in III, Johogakan, have been done many different types of the document, the archive project, especially focusing on visual images. The one project I and Professor Niwa and we are doing is a document film or documentary film archive. So the correction, and because there's so many document film or documentary film in Japan, in film company and some other storage. So we need to preserve all these kinds of documentary films in many places. And we are doing the Eiga, Kirok Eiga workshop and the Kirok Eiga project and Kirok Eiga Hozon project in those preserving project. There's many symposiums with directors in documentary. And also the other project I committed is trial studies in NHK archive, because NHK has a huge archive in Kawaguchi City. And in Kawaguchi City, in NHK archive, they have 700,000 programs, 700,000, 70,000, 700,000 programs, which is digitalized. And they also have 5 million news, which is already digitalized. So huge, how to say, document, the document of the broadcasting program already. So why that kind of thing we don't use? Because among these documented archive, there are many information also about the cancer and disaster and so on. So why we don't use these kind of a huge volume of documented image? So in these trial studies in NHK archive, some of the researchers, we organize the project or program, and we say include, or we invite and include some of the researchers to use this NHK archives. Also, I'm doing the TV scenario archive project, because TV scenario is not book. Because scenario is scenario. Scenario is how to say, scenario was printed when some of the TV program or film were produced. But if the film or TV program was already finished, scenario are not preserved by themselves. Because if it were book is corrected in a library. But the scenario is only, how to say, printed in 100 pieces or 80 pieces, only for the actors and the staff of production team, and then finish. But the scenario is very important to understand the TV program and the films. So why we don't archive all these scenarios? So this scenario archiving project is also proceeding, but also still ongoing. So we can think about a history with visual document, because throughout the 20th century, especially late 20th century, the film and television and radio and especially many photographs, the huge number of the images was already produced in Japan and all the other countries. It's a huge document of today. So why we don't archive all these kinds of images in some digital archives? And why we don't construct the system by which we can appropriate all these kinds of, or reuse or recycle all these kinds of different images? I already distribute my project of the visualizing post-war Tokyo, because in this MOOC project, in this course, because I'm doing this course on Tuesday in this semester, in this course, I use so many visual images and visual document which is archived in NHK and other companies. And we try to reconsider about the Tokyo and OCW, I skip. So finally, I'd say I summarize what I discussed, and I propose some of the idea about the future. Because throughout in modern era, from 16th century and 21st century, we are experienced drastic change of knowledge production system. In 16th century, we experienced drastic change of knowledge production system based on printing revolution. And in 21st century, we are experienced drastic change of knowledge production system based on digital technology. These two transformations are in some sense similar, because expansion of a very rapid expansion of information and accessibility to the information. But I think in the 21st century, the fact is ongoing is very big change from mass production to intellectual recycling. After the 16th century, first printing system, and secondly, the first is the publishing companies, and the secondary newspaper company, and thirdly, the broadcasting company. All this process was a mass expansion and development of the mass production system. But I think in 21st century, we are, we are trying to develop a kind of the intellectual recycling based on combination between, the collective knowledge and archive knowledge. Because in this technological situation, in the current technological situation, we can collect and we can preserve and we can reuse huge numbers of data and huge numbers of knowledge from archives. So if the printing system was one of the, or mass production system was one of the most important information system after the 16th century, I think the archive system or digital archive system is one of the most important systems after the 21st century. And based on this technological situation, we can understand the expansion of the new memory for knowledge production with digital archiving system. And in this situation, dialogue between collective knowledge and documented knowledge is very important. And for this dialogue between collective knowledge and documented knowledge, the university is very important, because university education and university research already include these two different moments. On the one hand, collective knowledge production, because we are discussing always. And on the other hand, the archive knowledge, or the use of archive knowledge. Because the library is very important, always in the university. So these two, and we are doing, or we are historically, the combination and dialogue between the collective knowledge and documented knowledge is already, how to say, we did in the university. So because of that, the university, I think university can be an agency of such mediation between two different types of knowledge. So first, in this process, we need to, but still we need to do some of the different things. First thing is we need to understand what we have. Because if you go to the library and library know the collection and the data of their books that they have. If you go to the museum, museum has the museum know, you can check what this museum have. And if you go to the archive, you can go, National Archive, something. You can you know what they have. But in this society, for example, one of the good example is Great East Japan earthquake. When in 2011, the March 11 in 2011, when Great East earthquake occurred, so many people took pictures of tsunami and earthquake and refugee people. Huge numbers of that data was how to say, documented in that moment by so many different type of people, by ordinary people and the newspaper company and TV company and how to say the rescue people and so on. But where these many different types of the documented data or document exist today? Because in that moment, people took the picture and the people took note, and the people write something, and huge volume of the document was emerged in 2011. But after that, we did not develop the integrated archive system of disaster. So if we do not develop this kind of the disaster archive, maybe even if some of the people took the very important pictures or moving image of the tsunami and the refugee, but if he died, or he or she died, that kind of document disappear. So actually, even in the case of the disaster, 2011, we do not know what we have. Maybe we have huge amount of the data and document about disaster in 2011, but we do not know. If it was books, okay, it is very easy because donate the book to the library. If it was an official document, okay, so go to the local government, and the local government keep. But all the other type of the data and document were gone. Not even yet, but easily disappear. So we need to construct a kind of a common inventory, and we need to develop a kind of a standard metadata and open access system and the public discussion for usage, all these kind of things. This is a necessary condition for the the society of intellectual recycling. And secondly, the intellectual property right issue is quite important. Because even if you have some kind of important images and data, for example, important moving image of refugee or dead people, you cannot use if you reserve the intellectual property right issue. There's many difficult legal issues about the archived data. One of the very difficult issue is orphan problem. Orphan is the children who don't have the father and mother. So orphan issue in this context is there's a huge number of the data and document and films and TV programs or moving image and pictures. Whose but we don't know who produced these images. We don't know whose property or whose image this is. In that case, we cannot use properly these moving images and the moving pictures and images, because all the right was belong to the owner, but we don't know the owner of the images. So that is a very difficult legal issue. So we need to reserve. We need to make a kind of the public space, public domain, in which we can use more freely these kind of, and we can combine different types of information knowledge for right purpose in the context. Thirdly, we need to foster professionals for intellectual recycling. Because nowadays, the number of the graduate students in Japanese university expanded after 19th century. Not 19th century, 1990s, and today. So even ITasia or other graduate school in Tokyo University, the number of the graduate school, or number of the students who have the MA and PhD, is very big. But you don't have enough job, professional job. That is problem. So archivist is also important. So very high, the very professional digital archivist is that we need to develop the qualified specialists working in the National Institutional Archives. Because the qualified specialists or archive specialists need to have the important knowledge about art and culture first, and legal frame second, and ICT technology. These three elements is necessary to develop the good archive. So ICT technology is necessary, but at the same time, legal issue is very big and very difficult. So you need to know the enough competence and the enough knowledge about the legal issue, and also cultures knowledge. These three is quite necessary. So maybe this is a declaration of Archive Asia, because originally my PowerPoint was I used this PowerPoint in the lectures in the Asian Culture Forum, which was take place in Gwangju last month. So in this Asian Culture Forum, because Gwangju and Yokohama and Gwangju and some of the other Chinese cities they are now want to be a so-called cultural city, and in Gwangju, the Culture Forum, Asian Culture Forum conference was organized, and I did my lecture. And in that lecture, I proposed Archive Asia Declaration, which consists of 4 elements. One is establish the Asian Digital Archive Institute. Second, education of the professionals who support digital archives. And third, make cultural resources, digital archive open data. And fourth, drastic orphan works provisions. But I want to propose the possibility of, how to say, archive cancer area, or Asian Cancer Archive Declaration, something like that. In that sense, how we can establish Asian Digital Archive Institute for Cancer Studies. And in that concept, we also think about education for the professionals who support digital archive on cancer studies. And at the same time, because these kinds of professionals is quite necessary. And thirdly, we can discuss about how to make the cultural resources of cancer digital archive, open data or open access to the cancer information about the cancer. And finally, I'm not so sure in case of the cancer studies, but if some of the information or some of the data are orphan means how to say the owner of that data are not sure. Because of the how to say property right issue, if the owner of the data are not known, we cannot use legally. We cannot use the data. This is a problem because we need to, in some cases, we need to use that kind of knowledge. So we need to develop the frame to use orphan data or orphan document. I'm not so sure such kind of cases are still also exist in cancer studies. But some kind of the archive issue is so important in many different kinds of fields. I know disaster things and culture things and moving image, but maybe global health or Asian health issue is also maybe other field in which archive project or archive project is still, how to say, effective. So thank you very much for listening.